Hi, Mark Forsythe from the BC Historical Federation, back with you to talk about a new book, Lost Kootenays, A History in Pictures, a beautiful black and white book. It's Greg Nesteroff, who is the co-author of this, and he is connected with Lost Kootenays, a Facebook group that has about 50,000 followers, and some of the images have come through them, and also some of the information associated with the pictures. And Greg, it's great to have you back to zero in on the East Kootenay. And just before we look at the first image, the word Kootenay comes from what? Where does it come from?
It's a corruption of Tunaka, which is one of the first peoples of the area. And I mean, there are various etymologies that have been given for it that are frankly wrong, but the simplest explanation is that it is a corruption of Tunaka.
Tunaha. And the first image you're going to show us from the East Kootenay is zeroes in on them. What is this photo about?
So this is a group of Tunaka people at the St. Eugene Mission near Cranbrook. The mission was established in the 1870s, and a church was built in 1897 using the proceeds of the sale of a mining claim at Moyi that a Tunaka man discovered. And then from 1910 to 1970, a residential school was operated there, not just for Tunaka children, but also from other nations in BC. The buildings were abandoned for a long time, but the Tunaka then decided to convert them into a resort that would reclaim their heritage. And so today you can stay at the St. Eugene Golf Resort and Casino, which includes a Tunaka Interpretive Center. And it was a pretty unique project.
Absolutely. I remember being there many years ago when they were just making that conversion, and they were so proud that they were able to use that facility and the lands in a way that suited them, not someone else. So let's move from there, I guess, into early settler history, which is the gold rush and what grew up around, I think it was the Wild Horse Creek gold rush in that particular area.
That's exactly right. And this is actually the oldest picture that we used in the book. It shows Galbraiths Ferry across the Kootenay River in the 1860s. This was a ferry that was set up by John and Sarah Galbraith in response to the Wild Horse Gold Rush. And it's close to where Fort Steele is today. And the Galbraiths were the first European settlers in the area, and they ran a general store, but their ferry was only in use for maybe 5 years, and then the rush subsided. Although there was then a second rush or second period of great activity starting about the mid-1880s.
I think you can see the cable in the image, and it's a reaction ferry, isn't it? Where the power of the river moves the ferry across?
That's right. Yeah, not a as opposed to a cable ferry where the ferry follows the path of a cable through the water, but a reaction ferry. And not sure who these. Not sure who it is that's crossing, but that's an awful lot of animals and quite a few trips they probably had to make to get everything across.
Okay, from Galbraiths Ferry, we go to part of the Kootenay logging history, and I can't quite believe what I'm seeing in this one. Can you describe it?
Well, I mean, this is a crew from the Crow's Nest Pass Lumber Company clearing a jam on the Bull River sometime in 1910 to 1914. We don't know a lot else about this photo, but boy, what a mess and what an amazing photograph. This would have been very dangerous work to try to unclog this, and without heavy equipment, who knows how long it actually took them just with PVs and poles and things like that. We almost thought about putting. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, or what happens when they actually get it moving again? You'd want to be pretty close to the shore.
That's precisely it. So, I mean, I'm sure there were log jams all the time that they have to clear, but I don't know if I've ever seen something quite like this.
Let's go now to a big part of British Columbia history, as recently as the last summer at Lytton. This is Fernie on fire.
Yeah, one of two huge fires that leveled Fernie, actually. This is the first one that took place in 1904. And I don't know who saw this plume of smoke and thought, that would make a good postcard. But someone did, in fact, reach for their camera rather than heading for the hills when they saw this fire. So this pretty much devastated Fernie, although it was rebuilt. But then 4 years later, a forest fire again destroyed the town. And in that fire, at least 9 people died and thousands were left homeless.
You focus on some of the other groups of people who were in the East and the West Kootenay, the Japanese Canadians during internment, South Asians working in the sawmill community. Here are some Chinese workers in the East Kootenay, and what are they doing?
They're working on a canal at what is now Canal Flats in 1887. And this canal was an idea that was cooked up by a guy named William Adolph Bailey Groman, who was prominent in the Kootenays around that time. And he wanted to divert the Kootenay River into the Columbia River to free up the floodplain at Creston for agricultural purposes. But his canal was a big flop. There were only 2 boats that ever used it, ever crossed it. And then the CPR built a line that rendered the whole thing moot. But the important thing is we wanted to include a photo showing Chinese Canadian laborers who, in addition to this project, helped build the CPR main line and other Kootenay railways, often at very great personal risk.
And many stayed and became market gardeners, right?
That's right, market gardeners, or they were continued to do their own placer mining, or they ran laundries, they ran businesses. So, the Chinese communities in the Kootenays, particularly in places like Nelson and Roslyn, were grew to be fairly sizable and remained well into the 1950s and 60s.
Our next picture is a quaint little cabin. Har har. Look at this. What is it?
This is a very unusual building. It's the David Thompson Memorial Fort at Lake Windermere. And it was built in 1922, and it was supposed to look like something that might have stood in the early 19th century when David Thompson came through the area. It was meant to look, I guess, like a Hudson's Bay Company fort, but it didn't actually replicate one, or at least it wasn't based on any original plans. So it was meant to be a tourist attraction, but for various reasons, it never really caught on. And then it became a community hall. Then it was kind of left to fall into disrepair. And then there were some efforts to restore it, but they had a hard time because it wasn't, or at least at that time, it wasn't considered a genuine historic structure. And so instead it was torn down in 1969, and now there's some summer homes on the site.
Bit of Hollywood North at play there, I guess. Our next picture is remarkable. Anyone who has driven this road will not forget this particular canyon that you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, this is Sinclair Canyon at Radium Hot Springs, named after James Sinclair, who guided a couple of dozen families from Manitoba to Washington State for the Hudson's Bay Company in the 19th century. And a road was built through this canyon in 1911. It's been upgraded since, but it's still a really a dramatic spot to drive through.
So this is inside Kootenay National Park, is that right?
Just inside the border of Kootenay National
Park. Just as you're coming in.
Yeah, which was established in the early 1920s.
I would think there's still some rock clearing that goes on in that neighborhood.
Quite possibly, yeah. But a very dramatic spot.
Our final picture from the East Kootenay today is quite an invention. What's the story behind this?
Well, this is a CPR Rotary Snowplow. And the CPR main line through the Selkirks and the Rockies was a huge engineering challenge. And one of the reasons was because of the amount of snow that had to be cleared every year and the ever-present danger of avalanches. For instance, in 1910, 58 men were buried while working to clear an earlier slide on the Rogers Pass. 32 of them, incidentally, were Japanese Canadians. But from 1888 onward, the CPR at least had steam-powered rotary snowplows like this one in use. What's interesting is it was actually based on a design that a dentist came up with, and then scaled up and adapted for snowplowing on trains.
Absolutely. You can almost hear the drill at work, can't you? That's remarkable. And that's what I love about Lost Kootenays, A History in Pictures, is the way these images really draw you in to the time and what people were doing, but you want to learn more. And that's the lovely thing about sharing history this way, Greg. And congratulations to you and your colleague Eric Brighton, and also all the people who contribute to your Facebook group, Lost Kootenays. And just a final thought from you on how this is becoming a new resource for historians like you to share work through groups like this.
It's a wonderful way to, well, for one thing, to get an answer to a question quickly. I mean, you can spend a lot of time trying to chase something down, but I found often if I ask our, the group mind now, which has more than 50,000 people, a question about local history, there's bound to be somebody who knows the answer or is able to point us in the right direction. So that kind of, I guess, crowdsourcing is the term for it, for historical purposes, is quite wonderful. In addition to sharing photos, the ability to, people are, very open to sharing what they know about this region, and it's been a wonderful thing.